Hey guys, I'm Chase Brogan. Today in this video, we're going to jump into something that I've never done in the past here on the channel and probably will never do again. We're not jumping into software, we're not jumping into mini PCs, we're not jumping into video games. We're jumping into a book called The Art of N64 Wrestling Games here. This combines classic wrestling with gaming. When you grew up in the 90s like me, you loved games like WWF No Mercy, WCW NWO World Tour, WCW NWO Revenge. These are my three favorite wrestling games of all time, but nowadays you even had modded versions of these titles. This book right here by fellow YouTuber RGT85 combs through all of that stuff. It's got interviews with former wrestlers that are in some of these games. It looks absolutely incredible. In fact, I've only gone 3 pages deep into this yet and decided to let me do a video with you guys and experience this with you guys on camera because this looks absolutely amazing. This is something that I'm going to reference in my future videos with Marcus Buff Bagwell. For those of you that don't know, I have a channel with him and we've done some wrestling video game content. We're going to do a lot more as well. And this book looks to really get all the in-depth information about these games and make it readily available for major wrestling fans and gamers like myself. Now let's not wait any further. Let's open up this book and dive right into it. All right, guys, let's jump into The Art of N64 Wrestling Games by Sean RGT85 Long. First off, love the comic book sort of image here. That's obviously that of the WCW NWO Revenge cover. Let's dive straight into this. All right, table of contents here. Talks about the intro, N64 hardware controller, the games, the modding community, and the future. Got Austin 316 there. You can't go wrong. Hulk Hogan over here. I remember when him and Edge were tag team champions right after the NWO broke up and all that in WWF at the time. Intro by RGT85 himself right here. Kind of talks about, you know, his background being a wrestling fan and, you know, obviously a fan of the old school retro wrestling games for N64. Over here, we've got information on the N64 console. Great photos of not only the games, but also the console as well. Some of the different color options here. And the next page is all about the N64 controller. You either loved it or you hated it. For me, I was kind of split on it. It always looks really cool. I always loved the different color variations that they had as well. But the analog sticks on here was what I wasn't crazy about. Now, for old school wrestling games, though, I did enjoy the controller. It was a great layout of controls for that. It was racing games that I just wasn't crazy about, again, because of that analog stick on here. But great information on the controller. Here's all the games. Now, keep in mind, these are just the officially released titles. And what's really cool about this is we have US titles, but we also have some international releases as well, which I'm honestly not as familiar with. I'm familiar with some of them, but not all of them. This one right here, never actually played, but I have watched a lot of gameplay demos on YouTube, of course, but great games here. Really a great era of wrestling video games. Just seeing these photos takes me back to the late 90s. So first off, we start with WCW vs. NWO World Tour, released in 97, or 97 and 98, depending on where you were. I know the US, it was released in 97. Actually, there's the release dates right over there. This was the THQ release. Great photos here. Love the high quality photos that are used because it's very hard to actually get great shots of not only the cover, but also screenshots from the gameplay. We've got Buff Bagwell there taking the diamond cutter. Very cool. This was definitely, I always thought this was 96, but it was 97. Always loved the game. And this is really cool right here. Seeing, you know, these would have been in like magazines, little advertisements for the game. Love seeing that here. I remember this one here with the Giant playing the game. Everybody else kind of looking on. Really cool stuff. Talks about the gameplay here. Talks about, you know, what kind of went into it. And then there's also this brief interview here with X-Pac, who was in the video game. He even talks about his 40K residual that he got for being a character in here. And there he is. So moving on, we have Virtual Pro Wrestling right here, 64. I actually found this in the wild, a complete version of this game for like 20 bucks. I was just over the moon happy to find that out there in the wild. It's, not worth a ton of money, but it is rare to find, especially out there in the wild again. So I have yet to actually play that version, but I have played this version of the game, just haven't played my version that I found. But this was released in 1997 in Japan only for this version. It pretty much has the same roster as WCW versus NWO World Tour, but it's the Japanese release, and it's got some really good stuff going on in here. I gotta get my version of this out and play it. It has been probably, I don't know, 2 decades since I've last played that. Right here, I have never played this game, but I have seen a lot of gameplay demos of this. This is, and I'm going to butcher it, Nippon Pro Wrestling Tukan Road Brave Spirits, and I'm probably butchering, that title name, but I've seen a lot of gameplay demos of this. It has some really cool graphics. Definitely see the Japanese influence. And it's got Jushin Thunder Liger, who I'm a huge fan of. Fortunate enough to have seen him wrestle on the Indies before he retired. Just such talent on that guy. But really cool game. Great information on it. Next is WWF Warzone. This was released in '98, both to the US and European markets. And this was actually one of my least favorite games. Always had a cool title. I was a huge Stone Cold Steve Austin fan, but just never really liked the feel of the game. Graphics weren't bad. Match types weren't bad, but just always felt awkward. It was awkward movements, and I just never really got into it. Continuing on, though, we have some great photos here from advertisements once again. Cool to see it along some of its peers. This was Off-Road Challenge, which was a great game as well. Good information in here once again. Now, this is my all-time favorite classic wrestling game. This was released in '98, the sequel to World Tour, and you could be the NWO, you could be regular WCW guys. You had the Horsemen in here, you had Wolfpack, just lots of great wrestlers. If you go back to the WCW roster from '98, it was so stacked with so much talent over there. And this is by far the coolest video game cover ever right here. I just love what this has. It just instantly takes me back. But this is the game that I've played the most. The only thing I'll complain about is there's no Marcus Buff Bagwell in any of these screenshots here. But RGT 85 had him in the World Tour one, so we're going to give him a pass there. But really cool stuff. We're going to go ahead and switch it up here now. Oh, we're still on WCW NWO Revenge. Again, really love to see the advertisements here. Very cool. Wow, it takes me back. I remember seeing this page. I don't remember these so much, but I definitely remember this one in magazines back in 1998. Here we have Smart Mark Sterling talking about his experience with classic wrestling video games. Next we have the sequel to the previous release there that I wasn't familiar with. And this one, I'm not sure if I've played this one either. Actually, I think I have played this one. I don't think I had played the original version. But if we go over here, we have our screenshots again. Jushin Thunder Liger right there. Looks like a really great game. It's been so long for me since I've played this, but I'm going to have to go back and see if I can emulate it because I don't have a physical copy of this game. But looks to be absolutely amazing. Now we've got WCW Nitro over here. This was released in 1999. This is another game that looked really cool. Love this. I actually had this for the PC back in the day, and then later got it for N64 thinking it would be better, and it probably is a little bit better, but I don't know. To me, it's kind of a tough game to play. I was never good at it. I never got a feel for the controls, never got a feel for pretty much anything on there. I always got my ass kicked in this game, so it wasn't one of my favorites, and it's unfortunate because I love the roster. The 99 roster for WCW was great. The cover art here with Hollywood Hogan, Goldberg, and Kevin Nash is really cool. The graphics look great on here. The arenas look great. It just, I don't know. The mechanics of the game wasn't great for me. I never got a feel for it. So for me, I have it pretty low on my list of wrestling games. But again, even the advertisements make it look so much better than, unfortunately, I think it turned out to be. Another one here, WWF Attitude. This one, I don't know. This is another one I'm not crazy about, but it has some good elements to it for sure. Another one kind of similar to Warzone, where I just never had a great feel for this one either. It's very stiff sort of action on all of the wrestlers, but did have a really cool roster. Loved being Undertaker in here, but felt like it was somewhat limited. Like the entrance to the ring also didn't have much to it. It wasn't like WCW NWO Revenge, in my opinion. I'll have to read what RGT 85 thought about all this stuff, but for me, it wasn't one of the best. Cool advertisements, though, and I love that he was able to track down all of this and bring that into the mix here. It really ties everything together. Now, this game, I believe one of the, I guess the first release from EA Sports or Electronic Arts back then, this was one of my favorites, and I know it's not most people's favorites, but I really enjoyed it. You had the LWO in here. You had a great, in my opinion, great, sort of career mode, if you will. Great entrance as well. You have Hogan doing the drop kick a whole hell of a lot, which was interesting. I thought it was a great game, though. I believe this was also released for Game Boy Color, which obviously would have been very different. Limited controls on here and move sets, but still, in my opinion, a great game. Really enjoyed it. Advertisements for this weren't all that appealing, in my opinion, but still very cool that it was tracked down for this book here. Great information in here as well from RGT 85. Now, WWF WrestleMania 2000. This is another game that I absolutely love. This was released end of 1999, and in Japan, it was actually released in 2000. So obviously lines up with WrestleMania 2000 there. Great cover art on here. Great graphics, great gameplay. If anything, I think it's underrated. Everybody talks about WWF No Mercy, but this game, for me, was one of the best. Easily, I would say, in the top 3. Great advertisement information here as well. Cool interview with the Blue Meanie, who talks about his experience as a gamer and as a wrestler here, and how he always wanted to be in a video game. And this basically, was his dream come true, because he got to be in the game. You see him right here. Very cool story from him. Now we have Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 right here. Now, this is a game that everybody loves. It is an outstanding game. Great cover art on here as well. This was released in January 2000, only in Japan, so you didn't have a US release for this game. It was strictly in Japan. Great game, though. So many people love this, and they're continuing to mod this to this day. Continuing on, we have Hardcore Revolution from ECW. This was released in early 2000. Great game for being able to use ECW wrestlers. Now, the mechanics of these games, in my opinion, weren't up to par with WCW or WWF, but it was still very cool to be able to play as Rob Van Dam, to be able to play as New Jack, Sabu, so many classic ECW wrestlers. It was really a cool experience. We've got some of the advertisement shots in here as well. Now, this is probably the majority of people's favorite retro wrestling game, WWF No Mercy. This was great. People love to mod this to this day. Great cover art as well. I always loved being Undertaker in here. Undertaker, Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. You had great outfits and all that. You could do like the, backstage sort of backstage outfits, if you will. I remember Austin had like a camo hat. Really a cool experience with this game, and great advertisements here. I remember, I believe this was on the backside of a magazine. That's where I remember seeing it. THQ made this game. They went on to make tons of games for the WWF as well. It does talk about the issue with, I believe this was a save data error or glitch. Yeah, it talks about it right there. So when you created a character, it would basically, you create your character, then it would just totally wipe it off of your game. So it goes on and talks all about that. And there's a great interview with Stevie Richards. He has a great YouTube channel as well, a couple of YouTube channels. He just recently switched over to a new one. He talks a lot about video games on his channel as well, so shout out to him. Great interview here, though, that RGT85 did with Stevie Richards. Now we've got WCW Backstage Assault. Now this game, not not widely renowned by any means. In fact, I actually played through this game, or let me rephrase that. I attempted to play through this game recently. It's not as bad as I remember it being. Very limited because you're just strictly backstage in this game. So you're never in the ring. You're always in backstage areas, which is cool, but I'd like there to be a little more variation. It gets ridiculously hard and glitchy though when you go into the heavyweight mode in, career mode. And I forget if it's called career mode in here. It may not be, but it gets really tough. And I wanted to unlock Buff Bagwell. You have to do that in the heavyweight mode, which is the hard mode in this game. And it's just ridiculously difficult. But if you're playing the first 2 stages of career mode, it's actually pretty enjoyable. It's not as bad as I remember, so I do kind of regret talking so much smack about this game, but once you get into that heavyweight mode, you start to remember why it is a frustrating experience. So great information about the game though. Now we're getting into the modding community, and I've done some modding videos recently. There's some really great mods out there. You can download them all for free, which is awesome. And he actually talks about in here, RGT85 talks about Game Shark, and even provides the cheat codes that you can use in here with Game Shark Pro. Really cool. We've got TNA versus Ring of Honor here, which I'm not familiar with. This was released in 2006. I see we've got Samoa Joe here. I've never played this. I have no experience with this whatsoever, but now I have to go out there and find it. We've got ECW Barely Legal. This is a cool mod. Have played this. You've got a twist on, some of the old school ECW games. But I think the mechanics of it are much better. I think it plays much better as well. This was released in 2006. Moving on, we have Showdown 64. This has a great roster of wrestlers here. You can see we've got Owen Hart in here. We've got Shawn Michaels in here. We've got just a tremendous amount of great wrestlers. Hulk Hogan, of course. Great outfits in this game. This was released in 2013. And it's basically a hack of, or a mod of WWF No Mercy. Next one, WCW Feel the Bang. This is a great game. I mean, take a look at these graphics here. Look at Scott Hall. Absolutely incredible. This one was released in 2019. It's also basically a new version of WWF No Mercy. Doesn't work on the original console, but maybe someday that'll change. It's been a while since I played this, but it's probably my favorite mod. It's my second favorite mod, and I'll get to my favorite very soon. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. Freem. This is a great game. Great roster as well. Released in 2019 and then updated in 2023. Next one is WCW Saturday Night. I actually played this game. I did a video on this very recently, a couple weeks back. Great roster on here. I believe this follows the roster of like 92, 93 era of WCW. So you don't have Buff Bagwell. You have Marcus Alexander Bagwell. You've got great Muta in here. We've got Terry Funk in here. We've got the Fabulous Freebirds in here. Steiner Brothers. Just so many amazing wrestlers and roster on here. And this is by GM Spectre. Great. And we actually have an interview with them here. They've created a lot of these different mods for old school N64 style games. Now, this is what I would say is my favorite to date. This is the WWF Legends Challenge 64. Great game here. Great commentary. I mean, take a look at the graphics here. These graphics, I mean, that looks just like Marty Jannetty, looks just like Randy Savage. We've got Hulk Hogan, Big Boss Man here, Shawn Michaels, and there's a bunch of different outfit changes for everybody. I mean, some of these, I think there's like, 15 different outfit changes, and they're constantly upgrading this, adding new wrestlers into the mix. They've added several wrestlers since I did a video on this, probably about a year ago or so. So the only downside is, in my opinion, this game is not playable on original hardware. You have to download this, from the internet, which is a free download, so that's really cool. But you have to go that route. So, it's just not the same feel as being able to play on original hardware. We also have WrestleMania X, which is another video I did very recently. Great roster on here. Definitely not one of my favorite mods, but it is a great roster and it is a great feel to the game. And let's see, is there anything else here? Oh, we've got this game, which is in development. I do believe that they're still building upon this, but it's got a lot of classic wrestlers. This is Ultra Pro Wrestling. So kind of the same feel as the virtual pro wrestling games, but kicked up to, modern day. So you can see on here, graphics just look really incredible. Almost looks like that of like Xbox 360 graphics, but with a 90s sort of feel to them. So really great stuff here. Great book. You can see, the different people that were involved in making this. And what I thought was really cool, actually, when I got this, it fell on the ground after I took it out of the Amazon Prime, mailer. It fell on the ground like this. And I saw made in the United States, North Haven, Connecticut. And I thought this was really cool because I live right on the North Haven, Connecticut line. So I'm literally like 2 minutes away from North Haven, Connecticut. So it's cool to see that this was made almost in my hometown, but great back to this. Really well-made book. So props to Sean RGT 85 Long for making this. You can see how much he loves pro wrestling, how much he loves retro wrestling games. This is something that all retro wrestling game fans, gamers, and wrestling fans need to pick up. This was only 20 bucks. I got it from Prime. It arrived in just one day. Pick this book up if you're interested in wrestling or retro video games. You'll love this.